What's up, guys? So we all know Dustin Poirier and Tony Ferguson is not happening right now. Dana White has said that Dustin Poirier pulled out of negotiations and, in his words, turned down the fight with Tony Ferguson, while Dustin Poirier is saying that he just wants more money. He wants to fight and he wants more money, but if they're not going to pay him to fight someone like Tony Ferguson, and I will say it, fight anybody at this point, he probably should not be taking the fight because Dustin Poirier should be getting paid way more than he is right now. He's a former champion, and yes, I do believe defeating Max Holloway for a champion belt does warrant the champion status. Well, look at all the opponents he has beaten and how he is in the running and part of the group of the biggest stars in the sport, right? Fighting guys like Khabib, fighting guys like Conor McGregor, fighting guys like Tony Ferguson, etc., etc. The guy has cemented his name as one of the best fighters in the UFC pound for pound. He's very much marketable, extremely exciting, and the fans love him. He should be getting paid no matter who he is going to fight. And no way do I think he's just turning down Tony Ferguson. He's turning down the money. Because after Dana White said that he turned down Tony Ferguson, I guess technically Dana's not wrong entirely, but Dustin Poirier came out after and said, quote, "I want the fight." Unquote. Great to see that Tony is supporting him as well, saying pay the man because I want to fight him. If you're not a Tony Ferguson fan, are you even a fan of the sport at this point? If you're not a fan of either of these two, you have to question if you are really a fan of the sport. But it's great to see that the fighters are backing each other up, and you know how the business is going to be. Instead of actually paying the fighter, they're going to go to a fighter who's going to take the fight for less money. This is just smart business. And they have been saying that there are a few fights discussed for Tony Ferguson. It could be Dan Hooker. It could be Charles Oliveira, it could be Paul Felder. Now, I don't think Tony is necessarily excited for any of those fights, and Ariel Helwani said that low-key behind the scenes that Tony is not interested in those fights. So now there is talks, or at least discussion, for Tony Ferguson to fight Michael Chandler. Yes, Michael Chandler, the longtime Bellator veteran, former Bellator champion, has fought some great fighters in that organization throughout the years. He is a free agent, and they are looking to sign him up for the UFC. Well, you know what they're telling him? Hey, Michael Chandler, welcome to the rival organization. Here's Tony Ferguson as your debut. That is not doing him any kind of favors, especially with the money they potentially are going to give him, right? Because he is a free agent, he's going to sign his first contract with the UFC. First contract is probably going to be more than his Bellator contracts, but how much is it actually going to be? When we actually go and look at his numbers, he was doing 100 and 100 in his very last fight against Benson Henderson. $100,000 to show, $100,000 to win. I guarantee they're going to be upping that in the UFC, maybe to 150 because why is that number important? $150,000 to show and $150,000 to win is exactly what Dustin Poirier is making in the UFC. And because Dustin is not going to be taking the Tony fight with that kind of money, they're probably just going to use that to negotiate for Michael Chandler, knowing that he's only making $100,000 to show and $100,000 to win. And Chandler would be in the position to probably take the fight and take that negotiated money with it. So it's a very smart business move from the UFC and kind of disappointing for the fans. I mean, people want to see Tony Ferguson fight Dustin Poirier. It's potentially the most exciting fight of the year. But I am not going to cry about Michael Chandler versus Tony Ferguson because that fight is extremely interesting as well. Very tough fight for Michael Chandler, to be honest. If I go and look at how that fight might play out, generally speaking, I see the fight being very explosive in the first round. I think Michael Chandler is going to try to prove a point in his debut fight against one of the best fighters in the UFC. Trying to take off Tony Ferguson's head, fight the way he usually does. He's a technical brawler with really strong wrestling skills, an extreme powerhouse. Not the most technical guy around the board, but he gets through with his toughness, with his grit, with his power, and with his athleticism. But he's taken so much damage in his career. He's been knocked out plenty of times in his career, got one shot before. So even though the first round is going to be competitive with Tony Ferguson, because Tony does not slow down in the fight, and Michael Chandler has shown in the past that he does slow down when the pace is very fast, I see Michael Chandler sinking in the mid rounds with Tony Ferguson. I see Tony Ferguson overwhelming him and getting a TKO victory by dropping Chandler and then just putting the volume on him to the point where the ref had to stop the fight on the feet. This also seems to be a very motivated Tony Ferguson. The thing about Michael Chandler is, though, he doesn't deal as well against fighters who are pretty unorthodox. This goes into his Pitbull fight, who fights extremely unorthodox with a very wide karate stance and very awkward shot selections. This goes to his two Will Brooks fights back in the day as well. Will Brooks is an extremely awkward fighter to compete up against. And even the first Benson Henderson fight, when Benson Henderson wasn't really out of it or completely out of his prime, he had a very hard time with what everybody knows is a very awkward fighter to compete up against. Well, going up against the most awkward fighter in the UFC is going to be hard for him to deal with because things he's going to be throwing at him are not going to be as successful or as efficient as they usually are. Now, this doesn't mean that Michael Chandler doesn't have any way of winning this fight. Of course he does. Justin Gaethje showed a way that you could fight Tony Ferguson. Wait a bit, counter, be very patient, and allow Tony Ferguson to expose himself rather than you trying to expose him. Because the way Tony does fight, he will always expose himself on the offense when you're just waiting back a bit. When you engage him, you get closer to where the angles are a lot wider. His punches start getting around your guard, his elbows start landing, his knees start landing, the close range leg kicks that he throws start to connect at very weird angles that you aren't really prepared for. Waiting back and countering is a way that Michael Chandler can absolutely win this fight. Combined with leg kicks too. Chandler has amazingly powerful leg kicks just in case Tony Ferguson wants to stay back and use his reach a bit. A huge problem with Michael Chandler's usual technical forward pressuring brawling style when it meets someone like Tony Ferguson is the fact that he doesn't set up things that well or set up things that tricky. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot just reaching forward, overhand right. One jab from a long distance to a right straight or to a right uppercut or something like that. It's nothing really tricking Tony Ferguson, who's going to have a major reach advantage. And if he wants, he can really dictate the pace of the fight because of that. Because of the reason that he can counter Michael Chandler whenever Chandler moves forward from a distance. Leg kicks might be a problem for Tony Ferguson to get around, but everything else should be pretty obvious for Tony Ferguson to counter or evade. In the strategy element of the fight, the way Michael Chandler might compete and might approach the fight makes it a lot more interesting on paper because he definitely has the skills and he definitely has the attributes to beat someone like Tony Ferguson. It's just how he approaches the fight. If he approaches the way we always see him compete, he is probably going to get overwhelmed in the mid rounds. So my early prediction is I do see Tony Ferguson defeating Michael Chandler by a 4th round TKO due to strikes. Now we have to remind ourselves this fight is not 100% confirmed, it's just in discussions. Every fight with Tony Ferguson right now is only in discussion. But this does seem the most logical fight to put on, either this or Dan Hooker or something like that. But I would think Tony Ferguson would be up for Michael Chandler over some of the other contenders that are ranked below him. Chandler is a name that a lot of the hardcore fans know about. He is a former Bellator champion. He has just defeated and has fought very good fighters in the past. And this isn't even the first time they did something like this for Tony Ferguson. I mean, on short notice, they brought in Lando Venata from a different organization as well, and that proved to be very tough for Tony Ferguson. So who knows, maybe the switch of opponents, whenever you switch opponents for Tony, he doesn't compete as well up against. That might be the same thing for his performance against Justin Gaethje, possibly. I don't think so, but it is a possibility that if he has a game plan for you, that's when Tony Ferguson really turns it on. But when he doesn't, because of the switch of opponents, he isn't able to put things together that well, because he is his own head coach, and a lot of people have to remember that. Tony runs his own camps, and he's his own head coach. A lot of responsibility and a lot of pressure on himself. So can't wait to see who it is. No matter who it is, I want to see it. The one I like the most, of course, is Dustin Poirier. If not him, Charles Oliveira is my secondary option. Leave a comment below. What do you guys think? Who do you guys think he's going to fight? And how would you guys think a Michael Chandler fight would play out? I'm pretty sure most people would agree that Tony Ferguson would have his number and tear him apart in like the mid to late rounds. I'm very much looking forward to see your guys' comments on that, and I'll see you guys in the next video.